April the 19th at Brands Hatch sees the start of the Suzuki Swift Challenge, incorporated in the Uniroyal Production Saloon Car Championship. As the red light turns to green, we see larger and faster cars in Class C at the front of the grid, but Class D is exclusively made up of Suzukis. Brett Darrell is seen here, leading for the first time into Druids, and often we see Class C getting in the way of Class D, who are politely asked to move to one side. Seen here, Darrell leads Alistair Davidson and Tim Busby. His transformation from 2 wheels to 4 motorcycles last year, Suzuki's this year, has been a successful transition. All 3 cars seem to be leading the class at this point. Alistair has opted for the new Mark II version of this popular little hatchback. Round Paddock Hill Bend, Brett holds the slenderest of leads going up into Druids from Tim Busby, but Tim manages to slip by before clearways the last corner. Unfortunately though, he makes an error taking a very wide line, and this gives Brett Darrell enough room to slip through and hold the narrowest of leads to the checkered flag.
First time out, you must be feeling very pleased with yourself.
I'm reasonably pleased with myself, yeah. It was a nice experience, a little bit different to motorbike racing. In fact, it's probably the first race I've ever won in my life without breaking a bone.
For round 2, we move north to Silverstone on the new national circuit, where Alistair Davidson, this time free from gremlins, did not give the opportunity to Brett Darrell that Tim Busby gave him on the final corner of the first round. So, Alistair Davidson led most of the race through to the checkered flag to collect his first garland of the season. Then we move further north for the next round on the 16th of April at Donington, where we appear in car with Alistair Davidson. At the start, Alistair shows that the 1300 Suzuki is as quick off the mark as the cars in Class C. Going into Redgate for the first time, you see some Class C cars actually hold up Alistair as he tries to take the lead of Class D. Alistair was the 1988 class champion, but amassed enough points to take the Uniroyal Production Saloon Car Championship outright. But newcomer Brett, seen here in the red car, is going to make life more difficult for Alistair this year. Alistair, in the Mark II Suzuki, managed to hold on to the lead to the checkered flag, often giving the Class C cars a hard time, demonstrating how well they hug the track going around the corners and thus dominating Class D. Alistair receives the flag for the 2nd time this year. Second in class went to Brett in the red Suzuki, owned and raced in 1988 by Guy Povey. Third in class fell to Richard Waller in the very attractive multicoloured Suzuki number 128. Fourth went to Tony Butt in the last year's championship winning car of Alistair Davidson, number 124. For the 4th round on May Day bank holiday, we move back south again to Silverstone, where we're on board with Alistair Davidson, who again is hampered by Class C cars, the Golfs and Astras ahead of him. In turn though, Alistair receives a hard time from Birmingham's own export Brett Darrell. Here, constantly swapping places with Alistair, lap after lap. This race proving to be the most demanding of the season for Alistair, who's probably wishing at this point that Brett had stayed with the 2 wheels of the motorcycles he campaigned so successfully last year. But he maintained the pressure on Brett and was ahead where it mattered at the checkered flag to complete a hat-trick of wins at this, only the 4th round of the season. That brings the tally so far this year to 1 win for Brett, 3 wins for Alistair, seen here in the immaculate Star Vision car. For round 5, we leave the circuits of England temporarily to travel to Zandvoort in Holland for a 2-race weekend event in May, a very hot, sunny time. This is the first time this national championship has visited foreign parts. Brett won the first heat on the Saturday, leaving Alistair an even tougher job on the Sunday, as the results were to be taken on an aggregate score. In car with Alistair, we go into Tarzan Bend, the first bend, with Brett inching his way alongside, snatching the lead on the exit of the corner. Alistair may find the views of the circuit very strange, but the scene out of the front of the screen, that's a very familiar sight for him. In first place we have Brett, in second place we have Alistair, and third, there we see Tim Busby making a very welcome return. Richard Waller is in 4th place with Tony Butt in 5th. Ray Deacon in 6th in the only black car in the challenge. Unfortunately for Brett, he picked up a puncture and pitted for a wheel change. This cost him a lap and the lead, leaving Alistair breathing space, unhindered without the pressure from Brett. A marvellous race was taking place further down the field between Tony Butt in the white car and Ray Deacon, who drove his car all the way from the south coast of England and who very nearly didn't drive it home again, reaching new heights with a Suzuki Swift. He checks with our cameraman to make sure that he got that shot, as he certainly wasn't going to do it again. This leaves Alistair to take the flag just ahead of Brett, but he was one lap down. Alistair didn't get the garland, but received a lovely little posy instead.
Okay, Roger, thanks very much indeed. With these, the Uniroyal rostrum.
The next round returned us to the northwest of England for the Alton Park 1 hour, 2-driver endurance race. This sees all 4 classes together and required a rolling start. The Class A cars, mostly Cosworth Sierras, at the first corner started disputing parking spaces along the bank. And when the time came for the Suzukis to come through, parking space was at a premium. The lead from the start was held by Tim Busby and Simon Munger. Second was Brett Darrell and motorcyclist Wayne Wainwright. Third place fell to Tony Butt and Jeff Sizzi, and fourth was Alistair Davidson and Sean Andrews in the Mark II Suzuki. Tim and Simon always seem to excel in the long-distance races and have done so over the past 3 seasons. They obviously suit each other. Here we see Tim, after handing over to Simon, looking hopeful that Simon can defend the lead that they have already. Alistair takes over from Sean Andrews. Coming out of the pit lane, he keeps over to the right to keep out of the way of the faster traffic passing. He's got a lot to make up though, as at the moment he's in 4th place. Tony Butt can be seen here demonstrating the road holding ability against a Sierra Cosworth. Brett in the red 122 car had to be content with 2nd place, as nobody seemed able to get to terms with Tim and Simon, who go through Deer Leap to take the checkered flag for another round of the Suzuki Challenge. And here's Simon showing his excitement and affection for Tim. The Wilhar 25-hour event was next to celebrate the world's longest motor race, commemorating the 25th anniversary of the East Anglian Wilhar Truck Rental Company. Tim Busby, again partnered by Simon Munger and Heather Bailey, won the class in 1988 and are favourites to do so again. These cars are expected to run for the 25 hours with very little maintenance, other than fuel, tyres, brakes and driver changes. Again, all the classes run together and require a pace car to start the race. As the pace car pulls off, the world's longest motor race is underway. This is Britain's only round-the-clock race, where not only the drivers keep the cars out there, but also the mechanics in the pits, the people who polish the cars, and the chefs that keep the supplies of food and drinks going for the team. They're the ones that maintain the cars on the track. As the cars go out, we can see the effect of the night racing, and the patterns the lights form through the night like fireflies in the mist. There in the distance, we can see the Tim Busby car coming into shot, identified by the orange beacon on his roof. He's coming in to change over to Simon for his stint. As Tim gets out of the car, Simon is in there. Heather checks the drink to make sure that it'll last until the next changeover. Simon, with lights ablaze, now goes off into the mist for his stint in the early morning. And as he goes off into the distance, there's Tim and Heather, who've won a well-earned rest and a nice hot cup of coffee. This team managed to climb to a staggering 10th overall during the race, putting them ahead of cars from all the other classes. They eventually finished 14th overall and first in class in the Suzuki Swift Challenge for the 2nd year running. The satisfaction shows on their faces. Round 8 saw us travel westward to Castle Combe in Wiltshire for another unique event, the double 10-lapper. This meant, after racing for 10 laps, the cars form another grid without returning to the pits and race again for another 10 laps, with the positions being taken at the end on aggregate. As the cars leave the grid and head off up into Quarry, we're in the car with Alistair. Brett to the fore and Tim alongside, with Class C cars now mixing it with the Suzukis. Ray brought up the rear and was all set for a tremendous dice with Richard Waller. Brett took the lead for the first race, closely followed by Tim, Alistair, Tony, Richard and Ray. The only change in position at the flag was Tim Busby in front of Brett. They now reform on the grid in their finishing order of the first race. As the lights turned to green for the second time, Alistair had Tim to the left, a gaggle of Class C cars to the front of him, and the rest of the Suzukis clinging to his rear bumper. Alistair heads off up into Quarry. Whoops! Tim forces his way through, breaking Alistair's headlight, inheriting second and demoting Alistair to third place. Tim got past Brett with the narrowest of margins and then continued to swap places lap after lap with Alistair, hanging on in there, and for good measure, pushing it to the limit and the edge of the track, trying to maintain his position. As we go back in car with Alistair, he's still having trouble with Class C cars, and Tim on his left, who's paying close attention, and in the front of him, to the right, as Tim then takes to the infield and hides in the long grass, planning his revenge. He eventually emerges, leaving a very anxious farmer waiting to have words with him, and a lot of rabbits seeking new homes. Another victory for the little red car and the boy from Birmingham, Brett Darrell. For the 9th round on July the 9th, we head northeast to the wilds of Lincolnshire, Cadwell Park, probably the most demanding circuit in the country for car and driver. As the cars leave the grid and into the first left-hander up the hill, Alistair quickly closes on Tim and checks that Tim's tailgate is shut. These guys are so considerate. Tim even hops to one side to let Alistair through. Car number 1 then moves towards Brett Darrell so that he could show him the same kindness, but the little red car wasn't having any of that and screamed off into the lead. And that left Alistair to dispute things with a Class C car. Ray Deacon couldn't find anyone to play with in the same class, so he played with Class C cars. We joined Timothy, who kept close company with Richard Waller, who in turn was very close to a Class C car which missed a gear, but was not missed by young Timothy, Language Timothy. Brett then led closely, followed by Alistair, then a Class C car in the way with Richard, Timothy and Tony at the back. Now, back in car with Alistair. Brett couldn't decide which way to pull over, which was the best side for passing. He pulled to the left and to the right. Alistair was also confused and he went to the left and the right. So in the end they decided to park at the side of the track and discuss it amicably, leaving Tim to inherit the lead and the checkered flag and a lovely little kiss from the lady. Tim liked kissing young ladies, so he decided it was his turn to win again on the 23rd of July at Brands Hatch, where Brett was second. So, after 10 rounds of the championship, there are 4 wins to Timothy, 4 wins to Alistair, 2 wins to Brett. But with 4 rounds to go, any one of the 3 can win the challenge outright. For the 11th round of the challenge on the 13th of August, we journeyed north to Silverstone to compete on the Grand Prix circuit. As the lights change to green, we see a back-end view of the new decor on Brett's car from Birmingham, with white bumpers this time. Early on in the race, Tim tried to make it another win and held on to the slenderest of leads from Brett, with Alistair in 3rd place holding station and watching the action. Alistair drove an immaculate race and eventually took the lead when the opportunity arose, and this must have upset Brett and Timothy as they decided to go off and play in the dirt. The eventual outcome was Alistair to take the checkered flag from Tim and Brett in 3rd. This gives Alistair his 5th win of the season and another garland to decorate his garage wall with. Round 12 saw us journey down south again to Brands Hatch for the final time on the 27th of August. As the lights changed to green, the cars left the grid in a cloud of tar smoke up into paddock. Out of paddock and up into Druids from in-car, we see Brett and Tim trying to put Class C cars between themselves and Alistair, while Tim also tries to see if Brett's bumpers are securely fixed. The Richard Waller car has now been taken over by James Roseblade, who's competing in his first race just ahead of Ray Deacon. Brett takes the lead with a Class C car in between himself and Tim, whilst Ray decides to look for new tyres, as his seem to have gone off, but not too much damage this time. At the checkered flag, it was Brett Darrell from Tim Busby, with Alistair in 3rd place. A well-deserved win for Brett. For round 13, we bounce back up to Silverstone for the 4th time this season competing on the national circuit for a 1-hour endurance race. And as with all endurance races, we're led to the start by a pace car. As the pace car pulls into the pits and the race is started, Brett leads into the first corner, closely followed by Alistair and Tim. Alistair's race was soon over, though, when he had to pull into the pits with mechanical problems. Tim Busby also had problems when he bounced over the curbs trying to avoid a Sierra. He collected a puncture. He had to pit the next lap to have a wheel changed, and although he rejoined the race, he was a lap down. This gave Brett a very comfortable lead, which he managed to hold until the checkered flag. In second place was Tony Butt and Andrew Day. In third place was John and James Roseblade in the multicoloured car. In fourth position, Tim Busby and Bill Gibson, normally the stalwarts of long-distance racing. And in fifth place was Ray Deacon and Simon Sable, giving the garlands this time to Brett Darrell and Wayne Wainwright. For the 14th and final round, we move further north to Donington Park on the 17th of September, also the fourth and final endurance round. This is a 25-lap race with mandatory driver changes. Once the pace car had peeled off, the early leader was Tim Busby from Alistair Davidson, followed by Brett Darrell. Brett soon got past Alistair to hold second place, closely on the bumpers of Tim. Tim was the first one to pit in this event, to change with Simon Munger, his normal partner. Then the brothers Roseblade came in to change, followed by Tony Butt handing over to Ray Deacon. A very swift and well-executed driver change as Wayne handed over to Brett meant that they had an unassailable lead in the race. Brett pulled out onto the track with a 15-second margin over the second-place car of Tim Busby and Simon Munger. As Brett took the flag, it was Tim and Simon who collected second in the race from Alistair Davidson and Carl Jones in third. And fourth and fifth was not decided until they reached the checkered flag between the brothers Roseblade and Butt and Deacon. But fourth was a result for the Roseblades by only half a second after 25 laps. Brett Darrell collected the checkered flag to take the race, the class, and the 1989 Suzuki Swift Challenge. 1990 Suzuki Swift Challenge, Class D of the Firestone Production Saloon Car Championship for these superb 1300cc 90 horsepower projectiles. 14 races at 9 circuits in England, Scotland and Wales, and it's action all the way. Round 1 here at Pembrey in Wales. We're with Tim Busby from Aylesbury, and it's the Class C cars ahead. Down to the first corner, and it's a terrific traffic jam as they fight their way round. We're back again with Busby, and he's had a thump from the back. That's a masterly recovery. He's on the grass, he's getting back. Meantime, the rest are streaming through. Busby has had a big one, but he's back on the track, he's going well. And now Brett Darrell's in trouble in the pink car. He's collided with Wainwright. He's rejoining. Back on the track too, like Tim Busby. And meantime, Peter Baldwin leads. Look for number 92, Tim Busby. He's fighting his way back after that spin. There he is in the white Suzuki. Well on his way, Tim Busby. And here at the right-hander, Brett Darrell is second. Second to Phil White's car, and they're leading the battle, headed by Wainwright. Back again with Busby, and look at that, there's a VW on its side, and the pace car is out now, and no wonder they've got to retrieve that car, and it slows up Phil White. The rest close right up. It's going to be a much closer race now. Now the pace car will peel off, the race will rejoin, and it's done so. And number 92, Busby, is back amongst the leaders. And so is Brett Darrell. There's the pink car. He's well on his way, and the winner is Tim Busby with Simon Munger, 6 points each. Round 2 is at Donington, and pole for the Suzukis, Wainwright, ahead of Tim Busby and Brett Darrell. Now we're looking back from Tim Busby's car at Steve Morris, and it is go. And number 100, Richard Kay, slots in behind Busby. Look for number 90, Phil White on the right. There he is. But Brett Darrell and Wainwright are ahead. Richard Kay tries to pass on the inside. There's contact. Busby spins. The rest go streaming through again, just as they did before. Busby rejoins last of all. What rotten luck. And at the Craner curves, there's no points for Tim today. Look at him, there he is in the background. Last. Now we're in car with Wainwright. Their VW Golf's ahead in the C class. And he's been hit by a Golf coming up to pass him. Wainwright has been hit, changes down a gear, accelerates hard, up to McLean's. Wainwright leads. Brett Darrell is in second place in the pink Suzuki. Wainwright is in trouble. Clear track ahead, smoke in the car, waves his hand, he's unlucky, still leading at Redgate, but Brett Darrell is getting closer and closer. There he is, right behind Wainwright, in car again. Listen to this strange noise at the back, and Darrell goes through into the lead, and Wainwright is fighting a puncture, as at the old hairpin, Tim Busby, number 92, he's been hit. Richard Kay behind him in 6th position. Looking back from Busby, Richard Kay behind. Coming up to Coppice, the right-hander, but Brett Darrell wins to lead the championship, and number 90, Phil White, is in second place.
Birthday present I wanted, 1st of April, and we got one of these.
It's your birthday today?
Yes, 1st of April.
Well, many congratulations on
Race 3 at Thruxton in Hampshire. There is the grid with the C-Class cars. In car with Phil White. Ahead is Wainwright in pole position. It's go. Richard Kay is ahead. Down to Allard. The right-hander, tightly packed race action round the first corner. In car with Phil White. Richard Kay coming up to the left-hander, and Cobb runs wide. Gets back onto the track, and this is White's opportunity to close up on and pass Kay, and he does so. Now it's Busby ahead. Into the chicane, it's a gaggle of Golfs, and it's a swarm of Swifts. Wainwright is leading. Brett Darrell, second in Class D. Phil White, with over 200 races, is well up, and his brother, Michael White, there he is in his first race. Last, but learning. Now, Wainwright leads at Seagrave. Through he goes, and there's Brett Woolley, and he's going off. It's his first year. Well held. Onto the chicane. And there's a spinner in the background. It's Tony Butt, and he's gone right the way round, 360 degrees. A village, they're all off. That's Richard Kay onto the grass. He's kept his foot down, he's motoring on, so is Wainwright, leading the race. And at the chicane, it's Steve Morris from Aylesbury, and he's got a major problem, look at it. Roll, roll, roll. Over and over he goes. The windscreen wipers are going. Steve is okay. Michael Edwards leading Richard Denby, fighting for the place. And at the end of the race, the winner on the right, Wayne Wainwright, followed by Brett Darrell. And Wayne takes the laurels, 1990's third winner. Round 4 of the Suzuki Swift Challenge was on Silverstone's national circuit, and the weather was superb for the 10-lap race. As the grid formed up, Brett Darrell led the championship, 2 points ahead of Phil White and Wayne Wainwright. Wayne and Brett were driving the 2 fastest Suzukis on the grid, ready for another great race. In car with Tony Butt, down to Cops, a fast run down to Cops, past the new press centre on the right, the grandstands on the left, underneath the bridge, up to Cops. And Phil White leads into Cops. Wainwright is second, Darrell is third, Busby is fourth. Then it's Brett Woodley.